Who do you want to start?
Oh, going live now. We'll go alphabetical order, I guess. So, hey everyone, joined today with a diverse array of guests, and we're going to be discussing whether or not Joe Biden should drop out of the presidential race. So, I'll just do alphabetical order to start off with, do introductions. First up, we have Chris Ferguson.
How you doing? Yeah, I'm Chris Ferguson. I'm a professor of psychology at Stetson University, and I'm a clinical psychologist. So I don't know if I have a strong opinion about where I want to see things go, other than I think it's kind of interesting from a popcorn and soda kind of way, and also to speculate a little bit from the mental health side. So I'll probably talk a little bit more about that.
All right, counterpoints.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Connor. I run a YouTube channel named Counterpoints 40K. I mostly break down Warhammer and science fiction on that channel. However, I also have been a passionate participant in the Twitch and YouTube political debate scene for a few years now. You might have seen me on some other debates. I am resigned to the fact that we will likely have to deal with a Biden candidacy, but I'm going to argue for the ideal that he should not be running. And yeah, and can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, my folks at home are having some issues with my audio, so I'll expand on my ideas later, but I'll be in the against Biden camp.
Okay. Frank Bowman.
Hi, my name's Frank Bowman. I'm an emeritus professor of law at the University of Missouri. I now live back home in my home state of Colorado, where I'm got a fancy, meaningless title as the provost visiting scholar at Fort Lewis College. I do a lot of writing on presidential power and some local political work. I've written in Slate and commented elsewhere that, with regret, I conclude that the president ought to step aside and let someone else take up the banners, for the simple reason that I don't think he can win. And that brings on the Trumpian apocalypse. And I'll expand on that later.
Okay. Soyattle.
Hey everyone, how you doing? I don't know if my camera's working. I'm going to assume that it's either completely off at this point or it's working just fine. I am a political commentator as a hobby. My day job is a software developer for a nuclear company, and I have been a board member of the Washington State Environment Caucus. I've also been a part-time employee of Progressive Victory at one point, many months ago. But now I am riding with Biden. I am all in on the Democratic Party. What that means with regard to Biden's candidacy is admittedly complicated. I think that he probably has to decide right quick whether he's staying or going. From what I see today, it looks like he's staying.
Okay. And just a heads up, your audio is a little bit muffled, okay?
That's the best I'm going to do. Sorry about that.
And WhickTV, last but not least.
Oh, well, I don't know about that not least thing. So yeah, my name's WhickTV. I do, before we move any further, get a check cashed by Progressive Victory. They don't tell me what to say or do, right? But I do consult with them, and they do give me money just up front. Gang, I think that the calls to replace Biden is a foolish notion. Yes, we're down in the polls, but the idea that Biden cannot win, I think, is pernicious. I think it's harmful. And I think it's just, and most importantly, I think it's untrue. I think the data shows he is down, but not down in such a way that is lethal. And I think there's plenty that the Democratic Party can do, as well as Biden himself and those who wish to support the Democratic nominee, that can push him over the edge when it comes to November. We have 119 days. That's plenty of time. But there is this issue that I think we have to deal with first, and that is solidifying the idea that he is our candidate. He's the people that the primary voters voted for. He's a person that is our nominee and will likely be our nominee. And I think that we need to kind of rally behind him at this point. But that's me. WhickTV. I yap for a living. Okay, they pay me to talk. So
Okay. Well, thank you all for the introductions. We might have Dylan Burns join us a little bit later. He's having some problems right now. He's in Ukraine right now, and unfortunately, the war has cost his internet connection some trouble. So we'll see. If you're in the chat, Dylan, yell at me if you're in the waiting room and I don't see you. Okay. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get this started. I'll keep it pretty open for now. I'll open the floor. Sorry, open the floor. So
Yeah, do you guys mind if I expand? That way I can give you something to wrestle with. So the fact is that we all saw the debate. Not only did we see the debate, we saw the follow-up interview afterwards. And it's not that the interview was particularly bad. He didn't have any major brain farts. He didn't tail off towards the end of his speech. He addressed exactly what was going on. And on top of that, if anything, I would applaud the fact that, I'm in relatively more mature company, so I won't use profanity, but he said, fudge him. That's what he said. He said, fudge you to my critics. He said, fudge you to the media establishment. He said, fudge you to Trump. And he said, I'm in it to win it. Don't doubt me. Bet on me. Plenty of people have doubted me before, and I always showed them up, which is good. Like, that's decent messaging. But at the same time, my frustration in that interview is I'm still seeing a 80-year-old frail man who looks like he's on the verge of falling asleep during the conversation, or he's on the verge of trailing off. And so as a result, I mean, I'm almost being nice here. There are people in my sphere who are like, I can't imagine him making it another 4 months, let alone another 4 years. And I think that's the general vibe is like, okay, so we push him over the finish line. He wins. At what point in the next 4 years does he resign due to a health issue?
I mean, that's a legitimate concern, right? I'm not going to be one of those people who sits here and says there's nothing at all to be concerned about. Don't believe your lying eyes, yada yada yada. My contention here, what I think the only thing we need to be talking about is, can he win come 2024, come the November, right? Come November, come election day, who in the Democratic Party has the best chance of beating Trump? As our Frank Bowman, I believe is your name. Thank you. Said we want to avoid the Trump apocalypse. Okay, if Trump wins, there are a lot of really negative things that come along with that we want to avoid. So it becomes a simple calculation: who has the best chance of winning come election day? And from what I'm seeing, right, from the data, not the elite podcaster class that's panicking right now, but from the actual data, right, from polling and things, shows a pretty tight race. Okay, Trump got a bump in polls after the debate performance, but it wasn't a catastrophic bump in polls. It wasn't even out of the norm. It was about 2 points. Okay, that's imminently recoverable. We have to work on that now. But this idea that like he at some point will have a health issue which he will need to be replaced for. That's why we have a vice president. Period, right? Like that's it's baked into the cake. I don't see Biden's age, right? Well, let me ask you this, Counterpoints. What issue or what incident in the last 3.5 years has Biden's age prevented him from taking care of? Can you point to like maybe a foreign policy incident or something where his age has stopped him from performing his duties so far?
Well, and this is not trying to be offensive to anyone, but this is the rhetoric that you're going to have to rely on in order to push him over the edge, because you're going to have to say, listen, on policy, he's infinitely better. He has a competent cabinet. He has a decent vice president. There's fail safes in our power structure in order to make sure that he's not going to go, the Chinese killed Beau Biden, therefore I'm going to nuke them now. And then he presses a few buttons and then, destroys half the planet. But you have to have faith in the institutions as they presently exist in order to counter this potential scenario. And that is what the strongest argument from the right wing has been, is we're not talking about managing a restaurant or a corporation. We're talking about the most powerful job on the face of the planet. And so, Wick, to answer your question directly, no, I don't have a specific policy that I can point to in the past 3.5 years that I would be like, oh, Biden pooped the bed here. But I do think that I can point to people being very concerned about him being a competent executive, not just in a powerful position, in the most powerful position on the planet.
I'd say that's his management style. We have seen horrible micromanagement from Donald Trump We have seen interference, mob-like control over his underlings. We do not see that from our Democratic presidents. We see a strong executive with a healthy cabinet that backs them up. I don't think it's a stretch to say this is a departure from the practices of Democrats in general, or Joe Biden in specific. It is standard operating procedure for Joe to rely on experts to get things done.
Okay,
Let me step in can I
Please,
step
go
in
ahead.
here and respond? I think the problem with the arguments that have been made so far on both sides is that they are essentially pitched to people who know how government works, who have a sense of the essential fail-safes involved in government, who know the fundamental point that the federal government is essentially run by people other than the president, yada, yada, yada. But those aren't the people who are going to decide this election. The people who are going to decide this election are low information, relatively uncommitted independents and, sort of centrist Democrats, centrist Republicans. And what they see, for better or for worse, is a contest between an old crazy guy and an old verging on senile guy. And as between those two choices, low information voters, I don't know what they do if they choose between the two of them and on what ground, but I think a fair number of them will choose the crazy guy because to them he at least looks awake and vigorous, if you care. But more importantly, I think the people who are in the middle who will decide this election, particularly in swing states, are uncommitted, independent, or low information voters, and they just aren't going to show up. And particularly given the poll data that you're talking about, making this at very best for Biden right now, he's behind by some 3 points, 2 points, 3 points nationally, and often more than that in swing states. He would have to experience a huge swing in his direction among essentially uncommitted or low information voters. Before that debate, I was sort of I like Joe Biden. I've met him personally on occasion when I testified in the Senate, in committees of his, and so forth and so on. I think he's been a good president, far better than average president. And I kind of figured that if he could just sort of inch along for another few months and not completely collapse, that the basic trend line of boring elderly competence versus insanity would tilt the election in his favor. But I think that debate totally changes the dynamic. And there's another thing I'll say, and then I'll turn it back to you guys. It doesn't matter, I think, in the end, whether Joe Biden can or can't get through the next 4 months or another 4 years. It doesn't really matter anymore. What matters to a large extent is that the argument in the American political sphere is about whether he's capable, and essentially the entire center-left media complex and an increasing number of elected Democratic officials have said, we don't think he can do it. So I don't think any presidential candidate can possibly win in this environment. Can't be done.
Let me push back on that, because I hear this all the time, that there's this growing number of Democratic officials that are saying it. I mean, yes, true, but there's I think the max I've heard of is 9 out of hundreds of Democratic officials, okay? So I understand that there are concerns and that there are growing concerns, but I think to say that there's this huge amount of voters or huge amount of even elected officials that are turning against Biden doesn't seem to be playing out. What I do see, and what I will grant you, is that there is a large number of journalists, podcasters, influencers, these types, who are turning against Biden for a wide variety of reasons, right? And so, yes, I think that there's panic, and panic is contagious. And as it's going now, we need to change that. We need to fix that problem. But I don't think that...
Can't be done.
You don't think it can be?
Party's over. Party's over. Rubicon has been crossed on the media take on this.
Well,
let me just say.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, to speak to Frank's point a little bit, I'm probably as close here as anybody to what he just described. Like I said at the beginning, I'm not really super committed one way or to the other, even in the general election. I'm not. I voted for Biden in 2020. Should be upfront about it. I think I've been on this podcast with Tachyon before. I think I joked. My memory's terrible, so remind me if I did, about voting for Timothy the hippopotamus, San Antonio's. Yeah. So I don't know. I might be this guy who just I could do something else on was it Tuesday? So you can see my low information is a part of this too, other than the psychology side of things. But that is exactly it. I mean, my enthusiasm. I'm an N of one. I can't say there's an army of me necessarily, but I can say over the last 4 years, I've had suspicions about Biden's cognitive ability, which and I've written about it in public. So I've been concerned about this, and I think there's really the two questions. One is the question I think you've mentioned is who can beat Trump in November, and I don't like Trump. To be very clear about it. But there's also the question of should Biden be president now, right? And I think that's what's on the mind of a lot of voters right now, including myself. It's like, I don't know, this guy like takes naps and has a stop at 8 p.m. and stuff like that. So even the stuff Biden has said over the last week, and I actually read the transcript of the interview with Stephanopoulos, which is interesting because I think he came across better because he has a kind of natural charm. But if you read some of the stuff he said, without him emoting over it, it's pretty word salady in parts, and as a clinical psychologist who's done neuropsych testing and stuff like that, like, I can't say definitively that he has dementia, but it certainly doesn't look great, necessarily. So the impetus is really on him to show that he doesn't have these kind of cognitive decline.
How would you prove a negative like that though?
Well, how can you prove
testing? That was part of the George Stephanopoulos interview. He was like, "Hey, would you be willing to sign on to a cognitive test and do it?" It's like, I already do it. I do it every single day. I do it every single day that I'm president of the United States. And George pressed him on it, and he was like, "Yeah, well, you have a lot of people who are concerned, and will you commit to doing the test?" And he was like, "Nope." And that was it. That was like the entire conversation. Sorry. I've just wanted to get to this for a minute. So, Wick, I think you admitted to, at minimum, if you're not going to say a weakness on Biden's part, a weakness on the Democratic side, which is y'all don't have a deep bench, right? Like, so for Republicans, I can think of half a dozen people that could slot into, Donald Trump's boots and be competitive. Now, Ron DeSantis isn't great. He has his autist moments, but he could still be competitive in the general election.
Again, I don't think you're correct there. I think that as soon as if Trump needs to be replaced, I think it turns into infighting. I don't think there is another Trump out there. I don't think he has a successor.
There's not another Trump.
I think that there's no one that can be as competitive like he does. I think that as soon as he goes away, like if he was having these cognitive issues, which he might be, right? Have you read some of the transcripts of his talking points and things like that? But what I mean?
He did not have a good debate performance. He was graded on a scale.
Sure. If I may finish though, like this idea that Trump can there's this other Trump out there. I don't see it. Maybe Vivek, but then again you think, oh, his name's Vivek and he's brown. I'm just gonna be real. I don't think he gets those votes. Now I guess to talk to I'm sorry, Chris, was your name? Chris? Okay,
Chris,
sorry about that. I'm going to mess up.
No, I'm bad with names too, so I'll get don't worry about it.
Okay. I get this idea that people are worried right now, and it is something we need to fix. That I will cop to that 100%. But I think it's fixable, and I think I would challenge, if not Biden, then who? Who replaces Biden? And do they?
Let me answer that because that's. I mean, I think at this point, and I'm not a big fan of the vice president. I think even Kamala is a better shot than Biden because she's young. She can complete her sentences. She has a direct appeal to both some ethnic voters and certainly to women. At least she's cogent. I'm not a fan, but I think she'd be better than Biden at this point.
So,
and moreover, I think there's a host of other people out there who would do quite well. I think Gretchen Whitmer, although she claims today that she wouldn't run, would be wonderful. I think she'd walk over Trump. I think Annie Bashir would be fine. I think Governor of Illinois, Pritzker would be fine. Whole bunch of people. The only, I think, the cogent contrary argument is trying to figure out a path from Biden's withdrawal to replacement by one of those folks. And I certainly concede that that's a messy problem, but it's hardly an insoluble one. And one of the things that's quite odd about this whole conversation is, and not this conversation, but the conversation across the country is, well, wait, we couldn't actually have a open convention where we actually vote on people. Well, of course we could. We did that for decades and decades and decades. And I'm old enough to remember that. And it's fun. It's exciting. It would bring the country into the process of selecting a Democratic nominee in a way that nothing else could. And I can't imagine any outcome of such a process being worse than Joe. As much
we don't have to hold on. We don't have to hold on. We don't have to imagine. We have history to draw upon. Look at what happened in '68 with LBJ, right? In that convention process. Did that bring the country together where we all sang Kumbaya and LBJ or Ford, I guess it was, or who did we end up replacing him with? I forget exactly.
The circumstances are simply not analogous.
Sure,
yeah, and circumstances are not analogous. LBJ withdrew because we was losing the Vietnam War, and Humphrey was saddled with the war, whether he wanted to be or not.
And then 76, Reagan made his challenge right after all of that, right? And he did it in such a way that would boost his chance in 80, but it really did help cost his party the election in 76. So again, I will grant you, it's possible. It's possible that it would all go smoothly and there would be some great gains to be made, but the data doesn't bear that out. If we look at the polling of Kamala Harris, outside of one CNN poll where she's up, compared to Biden against Trump, there is no other poll out there that shows this. There was a Daily Mail poll that was released the very next day after that CNN poll. She was down by double digits, and Biden was still down. He was down by, I believe, 5, but she was down by 11. And so you're telling me that it is a better, less risky move to put the person in that's down by 11 than the one who's down by 5? I don't buy it.
So I want you to contend with this point, though, because it's a point I didn't get to finish earlier. So when I think of the Republican Party, I can think of several people. I'm not saying they're going to be Trump. I'm just saying that if you take Trump out, you can put another person in and they will be competitive. What you are telling me right now is that I can't think of, can you think of another Democrat that would be competitive? Because what you're telling me is a brown, cogent 50-year-old woman who allegedly has her own political accomplishments is not going to be competitive compared to an 80-year-old man who, let's just face it, did not have a good debate. And then after that, there's still an entire field of candidates that we could potentially have, but what have I heard? I've heard Newsom and Buttigieg. Those are the only two other names that I've heard in the entire Democratic field. There's no one else.
He named the governor of Illinois and Bashir.
Okay, well, would Whitmer be competitive? We slotted her out and slotted her in. And Wick, bear in mind, I know that we're dealing with a hypothetical. Biden has already said that he's going to run it. But I'm just saying, we're talking about should he be running it, or should we be replacing him?
Let's reverse the scenario.
Yeah.
If you had to replace Trump tomorrow, how would you do it? Does he have a running mate?
Well,
I don't
know if we want to get focused on the Trump discussion.
Right. No, but I want to go into the
mechanics. Just for the sake of an analogy, you could slot in DeSantis. I think in order of people who would be accepted by the party, it would be DeSantis, Haley, Christie. I think that would be the order of people.
How is it going to work democratically?
Hold on.
Going to work at all?
Soyattle, my buddy.
Yeah.
What?
I'm fighting this by making an analogy in a way that makes Connor sweat. It's ridiculous because you could, from the kingmaker's perspective, you could say, yes, we, the party, has decided DeSantis is now our candidate, but you haven't had votes, you haven't had primaries, you haven't had caucuses. people will reject them.
I mean, I think we have. I think we've had primaries, and I think on top of that, we're presuming in this scenario that Trump is no longer viable as a candidate.
I
for
don't think
reason.
this matters to this discussion.
Yeah,
I'm
I don't.
gonna be
Yeah, let's go
I
ahead and
don't.
move off the Trump thing. Though
Yeah, we're not.
you,
We're not debating about Trump right
you
now.
did
but
ask an
go
interesting
ahead.
question earlier, Wick. I want to get the answers from Connor and from Chris here. If not Biden, then who? Who do you put forth? Who do you support in the open convention or whatever it happens to be?
So, yeah, I have joke answers. So Obama
I don't want your
famously
joke
said,
answers. I want your real answers.
yeah, well, this is the kind of the weakness that I'm pointing to in the Democratic Party. So if you're talking about pragmatically, just because I think you want to not piss off people by passing them over for power, you would put in Kamala Harris, and then you would get a really popular vice president that would shore up her weaknesses. That would be the actual move. That way you don't piss off Kamala by passing her over, right? When it comes to like other potential candidates, this is where I'm still playing with the weakness that I'm pointing out about the Democrat Party. Obama said that Buttigieg is too short and too gay to be president. I still think that's true. Then when it comes to Whitmer, I don't know her record. So basically, I think the question is going to be Whitmer who? And then finally, it's Gavin Newsom. But with Gavin Newsom, he is so vocal about being an aggressive anti-assault weapons gun control nut that he would almost flip me in the other direction. So he feels like a poison pill, where if you put in Newsom, you might lose a bunch of independents because they don't want somebody who's a loon from California.
But this
Whitmer's the person MAGA tried to kidnap, just to remind you.
Okay.
This is a point I'm trying to make, however, right? If we are looking at this from just we set our fear aside, we set our panic aside, and we look at this clear-eyed, sober-minded Biden, and he might lose. That's true. But if you're putting money on it, Biden has the best chance. He just does from the data that we've seen. Again, if you read articles and stuff where people are rumor mongering, gossip mongering, right? Unnamed White House staffer says this, right? Fair enough. But there's been a lot of reporting that has had to been retracted lately of them reporting, oh, this congressman or this Democratic person said this. Then the Democratic congressman says, I never said that. That's a lie. And I think that it's become there's blood in the water. There's a feeding frenzy. There's a group of people who see their chance to push Biden out, and they're taking it. It's a soft coup. If I'm going to be hyperbolic.
Come. This is not any soft coup. Let me tell you, repeat a story that I wrote about in Slate a few days ago. A couple of days ago, I was helping my son cater a fundraising event for the congressional candidate who was running against Lauren Boebert before she bailed out and went across the state to another district. A fundraising event composed of basically lifelong committed Democratic folks in a district which is difficult for Democrats to win. And the candidate basically said, reluctantly, look, I listened to Biden's debate, and I'm sorry, but I simply don't think he can win. Even though I admire him. And I think that for candidates like me, in swing districts, he didn't put it in quite this way, but he has sense. He's now come out more publicly. This is poison. I'll lose. And you know what? Although there were some people later on came out saying they disagreed, I can tell you that the sentiment in that room, not a bunch of elitists, not a bunch of people in some kind of soft cabal to get rid of the president. People who basically support the president, have supported him all along, who would love to see him be reelected if he could be, and they didn't say boo. Because they saw what the world saw. You can't force people to. You say that you can turn this around. How?
Yes.
How?
Okay,
but you cannot make human beings unsee what they have seen. And they saw what they saw. And the trouble is that Biden is not helping. For example, his Stephanopoulos interview. Stephanopoulos asks him, well, Mr. President, Did you watch a tape of the debate? I don't think I did. What the hell?
Hold on. What's wrong with that answer?
Either A, he is lying, or B, he's out of his freaking mind.
What?
How can you possibly not have watched the video performance of this thing that is about to destroy your presidency and destroy your attempt at re-election? How could you not assess the video evidence?
People use that phrase colloquially all the time. This is what I talk about when I say that this is kind of
No.
I don't think
no,
I don't.
no,
I don't
no,
think I
no,
did.
hang on, let him answer.
Say all the time.
Frank, let him answer.
No, not a little bit. This is the president of the United States. He is in a situation where he has to know. He does know. He's been told 1,000,000 times. This is your big chance, Mr. President. You have to go out there and you have to show America that you are cogent, you are sharp, you are on top of it, you are doing what you have to do, and you are capable of not only serving out this term, but the rest of the term. And he screwed the pooch.
Again,
just
if your
needed
an
evidence,
alibi.
hold on, if your evidence of him screwing the pooch is him using a colloquialism such as, I don't think I did, right? Which again, is something I say all
Not
the
a
time.
colloquialism,
and-
that's an assertion of
One at a time.
fact.
Hold on.
Let him answer.
If I
It's
may
not a
answer,
colloquialism,
if I may-
it's
Frank,
an
let him
assertion
answer.
of
I'll
fact.
mute you.
again assert, as you are doing, sir, that this was like the only way he could have answered is in yes or no. He did say, I don't think I did. That is no. We colloquially understand it as no. When Counterpoints ask me, hey, did you see that movie? I don't think I did. Right? I say that all the time. Right? I say that all the time. People say this all the time. That's not evidence of anything, but the fact that you have made your decision about his mental fitness, right? And made your decision about whether or not he can win. Every piece of information and evidence that is coming in to you right now is being filtered through that lens. And that is a problem. We have to stop that. But that is the problem that you have. It's not a problem that the voters seem to have, because the voters and what we see in the data in the polls does not reflect this.
So,
But Frank, I want to actually, can I address Frank real quick?
Yeah.
So I appreciate you bringing the heat. I think you and I are probably fairly aligned in this sentiment. However, I would
I'm
tell
not
you
really
what I
mad
would
at
do.
you, by the way. I'm just being,
No, it's fine. We need to be passionate for the show. So I'm not taking any of this personally. But you asked, like, well, we saw what we saw. We can't unsee this thing. We can't unsee this fact. How do you put the toothpaste back in the tube? And so, unfortunately for some people in this space, there's something called a fortress arc, which is basically where you play defense. You bring all the cavalry in, you do prepared speeches, you do teleprompters, you do rallies, you only do rallies, teleprompted speeches, and prepared interviews. You lean on policy, you try to pass whatever policies you can between now and November, and you hope that you have enough momentum to carry you through. Now, that's not a satisfactory answer. That's why I've already conceded part of the argument, which is Biden, barring a major health emergency, is going to be the nominee. But the question, or at least the question that I'm trying to address, is should, right? Should this be the nominee? Should this be the person who's leading us? Should this be the person who's the chief executive of the United States of America? And my answer is largely no. We should find a more competent, energetic, young, vigorous, rhetorically talented person to lead us into the future. And by the way, that's not me simping for Trump.
I'll jump in to sort of explain what I think could have happened in these interviews, and it is a little disappointing on my side. I would have liked more of an explanation. Maybe this was a strategy, letting Trump play himself out, not responding, saying, I have more important things to do than watch myself in the mirror. This is all explainable, but the problem is that Joe might not be quick enough to come up with these on the spot. But I would expect that from someone who is not necessarily clever with his words. This is the problem between a TV president and a working president, and Joe Biden is a working president.
Okay, well, I want to give Chris a chance to answer since I asked you earlier. Who would be your replacement for Biden, Chris?
Well, first off, as a short man, I'm just wounded to learn that I can't be president. But that's a good question. I think, and I'm not sure who said it. Maybe it was Wick. I sort of agree that it's sort of difficult to move anybody in at this stage, I think, and it would probably cause a lot of chaos and not really be great for the Democratic Party. I mean, I think that, again, my sense, if I was going to somehow try to represent the sort of center-left voter, which again, as an N of one, is really risky for me to do, but I and this is where I also agree with Counterpoints. I think that the Democratic backbench is pretty weak right now, so I don't know. I mean, I think that like what the Democratic Party is thinking is different from what voters are thinking. So I think with like Kamala Harris, a lot of people are thinking, well, she's next in line. She's a highly accomplished black woman. So how's it going to look if she's passed over? And I actually don't think voters care as much about those issues as much as the Democratic Party does.
I think black voters care about those issues. I think the optics of that amongst the black electorate is going to be a problem if we pass her over.
They may. I mean, I'd be curious to see how that. I mean, again, I'm thinking in terms of like thinking of this as an empiricist, not as a patriot. I guess I'd be kind of curious to know how that goes, given that we've seen kind of a move of black and Latino voters towards the right. A little bit in recent years. Would that reverse it? I don't know. I'd be kind of curious to find that out. But overall, I think you could probably, in terms of, and this is the person whose name I was going to come up with anyway. In terms of race, I think that could be neutralized by looking at someone who is more centrist, perhaps, and is maybe a bit more appealing to voters. And so, I kind of the name I was thinking of, and you guys all might hate it, and that's fine if you do, was someone like Eric Adams or something like that, who has this kind of like centrist cred to some extent, who's been willing to kind of buck the party line. I think I'm just going to be honest with it, I think with Kamala Harris, the sort of like pronouns in the bio thing is going to come up, and that's going to be unappealing to a lot of voters. And I think someone like Eric Adams, excuse me, has managed to avoid that. But again, I'm not by any means a political mastermind, so it's not like I have like the Ferguson plan to rescue the Democratic Party. Or, I'm just kind of speaking in terms of my impressions of some of these things.
So two things. One, I think that if Biden steps aside or is replaced, it has to be Kamala. I don't think it can be anyone else. There's a couple reasons for that. You can't just transfer their war chest that they've made. I think the 230 million something that isn't transferable directly, right? We can't just give it to whoever. Harris can use it because she's part of the campaign right now. We have regulations on that. There's a lot of laws. I'm not an expert by any means, but people who are experts on this have shown me this, and I believe them. Okay, so that's one, right? So if we believe that money matters in elections, 200 million plus is a lot to give up. The second thing is the ballot situation, right? So if there are deadlines in different states, and each state has slightly different deadlines, okay? But there are deadlines in these states for what names get on the ballot. And if you think for a moment the GOP isn't going to play dirty if we tried to change the names of the ballot completely and take both Biden and Harris off, and put on, I don't know, Whitmer or Newsom or whoever, if you don't think they're going to mount all sorts of legal challenge to this, I don't know what to tell you. Now, do I think that they're all going to be successful? No, I think most won't. But they don't need most to be successful. They need a couple and some key swing states, and then it's game over. I think by keeping Harris as the nominee, if we replace him, replace Biden, and I think again, I think that's an own goal. That's a really bad idea. But if we do, it has to be Kamala, because if we don't choose Kamala, it opens up all sorts of lines of attack that aren't opened up otherwise. That's my thoughts on that. Yeah.
Let me respond to you from a legal perspective. As far as I know, the only state in which there would be any ballot problems at all is Ohio. The rest of the states will put on the ballot whoever the Democratic convention nominates. And even in Ohio, there are ways around that problem. I don't know enough about campaign.
Well, one at a time.
Pardon?
Go ahead.
How do you
Frank.
nominate?
I'm sorry?
Go ahead, Frank.
My question is that how would the party nominate in these states where the primary is very close or soon to pass?
So the primaries are done. The only question is who goes on the ballot, and who goes on the ballot is a result of whoever the convention chooses. Because although the primaries have taken place, the delegates have not voted. Ohio has a somewhat anomalous ballot deadline situation, which, again, I'm not an expert in this area, but I've been given to understand even that can probably be dealt with. But I'm not terribly worried about Ohio anyway, because Ohio right now is functionally a red state. Doesn't matter who you put up there, we're going to lose. Now, the question is everybody else. The money issue is a somewhat more complicated one, but indeed there, I think the notion that somehow or other you can't effectively transfer the war chest to entities who could use it in favor of the Democratic nominee is markedly overblown.
Yeah, so let me ask about the war chest. Do we think that it would be bad if this went to like a super PAC or something like that, and you had like two
That's what it would
campaigns?
be, right?
You had like a
It would
PAC.
have to be that. Yeah.
You had a PAC that was promoting whoever the Democratic nominee was, and then you also had their campaign. These two tracks, these two different sets of
They
ideas.
can't work with each other legally.
Yeah, but that could
right?
be good,
So,
right?
Well, yeah, and in any case, I mean, the reality of modern campaign finance is that, in fact, we have campaigns and we have PACs who nominally aren't supposed to coordinate with each other, but in fact, remarkably, they manage to somehow or other do it anyway, and it doesn't matter which party it is.
Well, hold on. But that's kind of the thing is we know. Let's just say it's like a generic Democratic PAC that just gets all the funds transferred from the Biden-Harris campaign. I can understand why the Biden-Harris campaign would not want to relinquish that power and control of the money, because it might get spent in ways that they wouldn't necessarily want it to be spent. But to pretend that like a vaguely Democratic PAC wouldn't be able to figure out how to do pro-Democratic propaganda during an election cycle, I think that's
again. I'm not. Again, I think you guys are underselling this. The ability to directly control your funds based on hoping and praying that the ally PAC does it in a way you find interesting, or maybe doing some shenanigans, right, as our friend here is suggesting that happens. I just don't. That when we talk about risk, that's a huge one. Okay, and again, I'm not a legal expert. But if we pass the torch today, you'd be correct about the ballot situation. But if this happens in a month, you are no longer correct, right? Or if this happens in a month and a half, again, with more states, you are no longer correct. So if we are going to...
No, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but the ballot situation is simply not a problem legally, period, anywhere other than Ohio, as long as, because who goes on the ballot is dependent upon who wins at the convention, everywhere except in Ohio.
Yeah, I see your hands raised, Soyattle. But real quick, Soyattle, I did tell Frank in the prior to starting. You said that you had to leave relatively soon, Frank?
Yes, I do.
Okay, let me know when you're ready, and I'll let you give your closing statement, but I'll let Soyattle go since he had his hand raised.
So the mechanics of this, when you are in a convention, when you're in a caucus, you become a delegate and you're a committed delegate. You're bound to vote for the candidate. And so I assume what Frank is referring to here is that if Joe Biden drops out, then those delegates become uncommitted delegates, and then they choose who to vote for. We have a convention fight. It gets a lot of media attention, but it's also going to raise a huge stink in the Democratic Party. But still remembering the fallout from 2016, the super delegate fiasco, all of those hurt feelings around 2016 are going to come rushing back. It's going to look bad.
Not only that, right? But this idea, right? So I'll tell you what happens. These are the two lines of attacks. One if it's Kamala, one if it's not. If Kamala is the nominee, and she, again, Biden steps down, Kamala becomes a nominee, she's chosen as a nominee, she goes forward. The first thing that people are going to ask is like, what did you know? When did you know it? What did you know about Biden's deteriorating mental condition? And when did you know it? And why did you lie to the American people about that? Biden's age, it's going to be an issue, but it's going to warp into that. It's going to warp into a question of Kamala's honesty. And I think that's a pretty powerful attack, especially if we give weight to the attack by replacing Biden because of his age. We are giving into that narrative, and I think that's a very powerful line by Republican adversaries. And I don't know how to respond to that, because Kamala, even today, right, or maybe not today, but this week has said, Biden's fine. We're riding with Biden. She's saying that now. So if we end up reversing that and have to say, well, actually, no, he wasn't fine, so we replaced him. That's a really bad thing. The second thing, if she's not the nominee, right, and she gets tossed out, what the line of attack comes is like, you guys are undemocratic, just like those people who tried to overturn the election in 2020. You were throwing the votes out of people. You were taking the process and you're saying, nope, we are deciding otherwise. We're going to overturn the will of the people. And I'm not saying that that's true or accurate, but that is a powerful line of attack that nullifies one of the advantages, one of the few advantages Democrats have this season, in pointing to January 6th and the insurrection at the Capitol and saying, that was really bad, because I think independents do take that into account. I think independents do worry about that kind of thing. And I think that, again, for canvassing in Ohio, a lot of the people said, we care about the democracy issue here. And I think that it's a problem if we can't be on the complete moral high ground here when it comes to that.
I do have to go.
Yeah. Okay, Frank, do you want to give a closing statement, your thoughts on the situation?
Very quickly, thank you for having me, and thanks to all the other guys for patiently putting up with my ranting. Here's the thing for me. I've spent like the last 8 years of my life fighting against Trump and Trumpism. I was involved pretty directly in both the Trump impeachments. I've defended Joe Biden against the efforts to impeach him. I testified in the Mayorkas impeachment craziness on behalf of the Democrats and the secretary. I've written for 8 years in every imaginable forum about the dangers that Trump and Trumpism present. And I believe profoundly, to the depths of my soul, that if that man is returned to the White House, American democracy is in deep, deep danger. And therefore, the only thing that really matters to me in this election is that he lose and that some Democrat win. I don't much care who it is. If this were an ordinary election against an ordinary Republican, pick one out of a hat, who was not an incipient authoritarian, then fine, I'd say fine, Joe, if you want to go on a suicide mission and lose because, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, you're a stubborn old person who refuses to recognize your mortality, okay, you lose. And the ordinary cycle of change in American politics goes on. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if it were anybody other than Trump. But if that man gets back in the White House, this democracy, this republic is in deep, deep trouble. And I am profoundly convinced, as much as I did not want to believe it up until 10 days ago, I thought Biden could eke this out. I no longer believe that to be true. And because I don't think that's true, I think any other reasonable alternative to Joe going and losing, and as people more knowledgeable than I about the intricacies of electoral politics have said, the odds of his losing in a landslide are considerably better than his eking out a narrow victory. I do think, and I could be wrong, of course, none of us really knows, that someone else might not do well. Someone else might lose. But I'm as convinced as I can be that Joe will lose. And I think we need to do something, anything, to give ourselves a chance to save this democracy.
Thank you.
With that bright thought, I'm out of here.
All right. Thank you for coming on, sharing your views. So, if you want to leave, you can click on the red disconnect button. And okay, anyway, I do want to ask this question here to the crowd. Now, we're all sort of like assuming that like maybe there's something wrong with Biden, but I can disconnect you if you.
Please do.
Okay, there we go. All right, so we're all assuming that there's something wrong with Biden. Is there nothing that he could do where?
I'll let you ask, but I want to respond to what he said.
Oh, well, you go ahead first, since this is going to be a whole topic change.
Oh, sure. So I too think that Trump is a threat to democracy. I too agree that the most important thing is to get rid of Trump and to make sure that he loses. I think that everyone here, except for Chris, maybe, right? Because Chris is kind of like, oh, boom, boom. I don't know you, right? So forgive me if I'm putting words in your mouth. But most of us here want Trump to lose. I don't disagree with that. But I take the opposite tack as our friend Frank Bowman there. I think that the quickest way to ensure that we lose is by replacing Biden. I think that it takes a very risky situation and amps up the risk tenfold. I think that it takes a chance to lose and it turns it to an almost guarantee. Never say never. I don't have a crystal ball. Maybe in November 5th, I'll be writing or I'll be doing a stream telling everyone why I was wrong. And I hope I am, right? I hope that if we replace Biden, if that happens, that on November 5th or 6th or the day after Election Day, I'm sitting there writing up a stream, very embarrassed, thinking, oh, you know what, gang, I know I was saying all this, but man, I was wrong, and this is why.
That's not going to happen.
I don't think
it's not going to happen.
I don't think
Yeah, sorry for interrupting,
So,
but we basically, I think everyone on the panel, including Frank, was resigned to the fact that Biden is going to be the nominee. And it's largely for all the pragmatic reasons you highlighted. Transferring money is a pain in the butt. We need name recognition. If you get somebody new, you're going to be giving up the incumbent advantage. Some of the people that we would pick are polling worse against Trump than Biden himself. So there's every reason in the world to go with a safer bet. The question is whether or not it's going to be enough. And then, I know you're appealing to pragmatics, and that's totally fine. Like, as a matter of fact, if I was in your position arguing your position, that's exactly what I would be arguing is pragmatically, it is Biden, ride or die. Everybody get on the same page. Let's win.
And I want
right?
to combat this doomerism, right? That Biden can't win. He absolutely can.
Give us
he
the path,
absolutely
Wick.
can.
Give us the path.
Sure, there's several. We don't even have just one. There's several paths to victory here. One of the things that Biden is doing that is giving me hope is going out and doing these interviews. Not just the interview with George Scarborough, but the one he did with George Stephanopoulos, sorry. And the one he did with Joe Scarborough this morning on Morning Joe, right? He was fine. He had some zingers in there. He brought the energy. He said what I wanted him to say. Fuck the haters, right? Or I'm sorry, fudge the haters. My bad. Potty mouth.
Well, Frank's gone, so I don't know if we can start saying the F word.
Fair enough.
We might.
You can if you want.
He's going to rally after rally after rally. He went to the North Carolina one. He was at Philadelphia and over on Sunday. He did some other events in Pennsylvania, right? He's had 19 public appearances since the debate. He's doing what he needs to do, right? What's dragging him down and what's making this worse are, and I hate to say it, right? People like Frank Bowman who are saying, oh, he's definitely going to lose. There's no hope. We have to give up, gang. We have to show our bellies. Imagine if Ukraine had done that when Russia invaded. And they just, oh, no, it's too much. There's too much against it. Everyone thinks we're going to lose. Let's just show our bellies, right? No, screw that. We're fighting. We're going to win this. Put our shoulders to the wheel and get up off our ass and get out there and get it. Gang, look, at the end of the day, this is what it does. Debates don't decide elections. Journalists don't decide elections. Podcasters don't decide elections. Voters decide elections. And I am out here trying to get as many voters to go to the polls on November 4th and say, Biden is our guy. He's the one that can defeat Trump. He's the one that can bring America to the golden age that we know it deserves. Okay, that's my rant. Sorry.
Well, I think you were about to ask Tachyon, what would Biden do or what could he do between now and November that would change my mind?
Yes.
And to be honest, it would be probably a healthy chunk of human growth hormone, some amphetamines, and some, like a decent debate performance between him and Trump.
Adrenochrome.
And then also, some adrenochrome straight up. And some competent public appearances. So just to say to the public appearances that I've seen so far, the speech the following day is when you get knocked down, you get back up. And that's great. That's American. It appeals to people who actually deal with real hardship. It's a decent line. It acknowledges that there was fault, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the problem with that is that man has slept and he's reading off of a teleprompter. And presidential emergencies don't always come after you sleep and you read the notes off of a teleprompter. Then when it comes to the George Stephanopoulos thing, he didn't do poorly, but I'm still hearing that kind of like that frail, hoarse, croaky voice where it's kind of like, listen here, Jack, like that kind of thing. And the truth is that if he needs to be as pumped as Wick is, okay, that's what we need. We need some excitement. We need some adrenaline. We need some amphetamines. We need some human growth hormone. Okay. Exactly. And if we don't get that, it will fudge things up.
You're not going to ask for policy changes? I mean, wouldn't that sweeten the pot?
Well, so here's my thing is
I'm joking.
Well, I was gonna say is I'm more Republican than I am Democrat. Like I'm okay with a secured border. I'm okay with limits to predominantly Muslim majority country, limits to immigration. I love the gun rights, all that kind of stuff. So from a policy perspective, the only reason why I'm riding with Biden, quote unquote, is because I view the alternative as a constitutional nightmare. So that's why I've flipped for this election.
And can you also just real quick, I hate to hog the mic here, but can you imagine how shameful it is to try to push the president out, right? Who you believe is a senile, doddering old man that can't string together sentences, and then fail in your ability to push him out. That senile, doddering old man BTFO'd you, okay, gang? He BTFO'd you. He told you to get out of here, to screw off.
You're happy now, but what if he loses?
Man, I would delete my account. Right? I would like writing for Slate.
But if Biden
Wick will delete his account. We've got it right here.
Wait. If Biden bullied his critics off of social media, or what would we delete? Or if he wins?
No. I was saying the shame would be so great having to lose to such a apparently senile man that I would have to.
Trump should self-delete. Got it. All right.
Chris, you were raising your hand.
Yeah, so kind of to try to answer your original question a little bit, and thinking of this as a psychologist, I think what people are their response to some of this is they think that someone who now first I was point we don't know definitively that Biden does or does not have dementia, right? It's not a thing we know definitively. So I mean, I think what people are looking for sort of fits into this idea that people with dementia either are coherent or they're not, and you can see them, and if they have a good day where they're coherent, then that means that they don't have dementia necessarily, and so I think that if you're thinking about take a disease like Alzheimer's disease, for instance, and the way that Biden presented himself, in the debate with Trump, which may have been a bad day, and in and of itself does not indicate that he has dementia, but that level of problems that he had speaking and being coherent and staying on topic is something we probably expect for somewhere in the early mid stage of Alzheimer's disease. So what people are looking for is someone who is really, really in the middle part. And it's important to understand that most people who are in the early stages of dementia are actually still pretty coherent. For the most part, they can hold a fluid conversation with people. They seem pretty normal in the midst of a conversation. You might have the exact same conversation with them an hour later, but they can seem pretty normal. And so I think the things that people are looking for is I want to see him have a good debate. I want to see him have a good speech. A person somewhere pretty well into Alzheimer's can have a good debate and can have a pretty good speech.
I have a follow-up question there, just because there was something that a actor named J Mac, who is more of a centrist fella, he pointed to something that he recognized, at least from stagecraft, that he believed explained Biden's rhetorical faults, which is basically, if you're an actor and you forget a line, which is, let's face it, that's kind of like a talking point or whatever. What you do is you kind of mentally search for the next major statement that you can kind of bring up in your mind, and then you clasp onto that, and then you try to take up the speech from that next major point. Because if you stay on the line that you can't catch, then you're just going to be stuck there forever, and you're basically going to, just drown. So he was saying that, based off of, we saw Biden jump a couple of tangents, he believes that it was more like it wasn't necessarily something to do with like mental acuity or clarity or whatever. It was more of looking for his talking point when he lost it. But then that's my thing too, is we've all been here for an hour or so. We've all been talking off the cuff about ideas, and relatively speaking, we've all been following each other on our tangents.
Right.
I want that, virtue in my commander in chief.
Yeah. Well, if I could for a minute, I just want to go through Biden's answer to one of the questions he got from Stephanopoulos, for instance. And this was the question he asked about, did you know how badly the interview was going, or the debate was going, right? And so his answer, this is Biden's answer, was, yeah, look, the whole way I prepared, nobody's fault mine. Nobody's fault but mine. I prepared what I usually would do, sitting down as I did, come back with foreign leaders or National Security Council for explicit detail. And I realized about partway through that, I get quoted, the New York Times had me down at 10 points before the debate. 9 now, or whatever.
See?
The fact of the matter is, what I looked at is that he also lied 28 times. I couldn't. I mean, the way the debate ran, not my fault, no one else's fault, no one else's fault. I mean, it's all over the place. I mean, it's not like I lost my train of thought and then I went down to my next point.
That's
that
actually
was 4 points in a paragraph.
Hold on. Hold on.
You gotta let me. You can tear it apart in a second. I need to dogpile on this one.
Yeah,
so
go
right
ahead.
there, I could see where he was going. Right? It's like, I overstudied. I got too nitty gritty. The truth is, it's a loose debate with a rhetorical opponent who's very slippery. I should have been more on my toes. So I inferred the second half of those tangents, but I did so because I'm trying to grade the man on a curve. But that's what I'm saying is I don't want to grade the man on a curve. He's the leader of the free friggin' world.
I don't care if Biden could win a debate.
You didn't actually give. He didn't say the things you said he said.
To you, Chris, though, like I've done show after show after show. I've done at this point hundreds of debates, dozens of call-in shows where anyone can call in. Biden was more coherent than some people I've had on my panel that I know don't suffer dementia, right? He was more coherent in that debate than a lot of people that I've seen talk about this, right? And I can give you video, right? I can show you the clips of these people they're being nervous and they just word salad vomit just constantly. So again, it's not good. It's not good. It's not good that he does it, but it's not dementia.
Well, but we don't know. I mean, so we have to first off compare his performance now to what it was before. But to get really to the end of the question, if it's going back to Tachyon's question, what would I want to see is, given that there seems to be a deterioration in some of his ability. Now, he's been in public. He has, maybe not like some of your guests. He's been in public. On the square before I was born. Practically, and I'm not young. So what would convince me, and I think what would convince a lot of people, is for him to get an objective psychologist who's not involved in his political team, get an established battery of neuropsychological tests, release that to the public. That would end the question, right?
No, it wouldn't. Let's be honest. No, it wouldn't.
No?
He would be, okay, these weren't really independent. There would be so many people having so many different... this is a problem here from just a strategic standpoint, is that, unfortunately, nothing he does will be enough to satisfy a lot of people right now. It's done. And that sucks. But he could get this battery of tests that you're talking about. He could have Trump pick the guy who does it, right? But there will always be, right, these people who have already made up their mind.
Right.
And that, I see too many downsides and not enough upsides.
Let me push back on that real quick. I'm the moderator, but I want to ask Wick, so you say that a lot of people have bought into this idea that, look, something's very wrong with Biden mentally. If that's true, is he still the best candidate?
Yes, because of the other issues that I've meant. Again, it's not good. It's an obstacle that I wish we didn't need to overcome, but we do need to overcome it. But it's not a lethal obstacle. However, replacing Biden would be, I feel, in my opinion, based on the data I have seen, lethal. It would kill us.
What's the best data you've seen where it's like, look, these other people can't win?
So the Daily Mail poll that came out right after CNN, There was a morning consult poll also. There's been the 538 outcome tracker when they compare these candidates, right? So I'll start with 538 and I'll work backwards. 538, right? Their little their like outcome predictor or whatever has 48% for Biden to win, which is down. It's low. I wish it was higher, but it's not. For Harris, let's just use Harris here. Her chances of winning are 24%. That's half. That's half. That's worse. Let's look at the Daily Mail poll. Or I'm sorry, the Morning Consult. I thought I was going to go backwards in the order I did. The Morning Consult poll, right, shows Harris down by I think 6 and Biden down by 2. Again, Harris loses. And the only other one who performs better than Biden is Michelle Obama. But Michelle Obama's just not going to run. She's not a real option. She said she won't run. There's just no way. In the Daily Mail poll that was released, Biden was down by 5. Kamala was down by 11 points. And everyone else, aside from Michelle Obama, was down by double digits. So again, poll after poll after poll, with CNN being the one outlier that I have seen, show other candidates other than Biden losing worse than Biden does. And so again, it's just is what it is at this point, right? This is the data. This is what I've seen. That could change, but it hasn't yet. And the trend lines are actually mixed. We do see some movement towards Biden, some swing states. We see some movement away. Pennsylvania, he's going away, unfortunately. And Michigan and Wisconsin and Georgia even is going towards. And I'm basing that data off the Morning Consult poll, which I saw yesterday or maybe the day before.
Do you think that there will be like an enthusiasm gap? I've heard some talk about that, like the idea that people may say they'll vote for Biden, but on that day they won't show up. We know Trump has this like group of, we call him crazy, whatever, but he has got a fan base or whatever, right? Is there a risk that Biden is losing?
My wife hates Trump more than I do. And she was like, hey, what's that RFK guy's deal? You know what I'm saying? And that's scary to me because it's like scary, RFK, the guy who ate a dog, the guy who, when he got accused of rape, he was like, listen, I was a wild and crazy guy when I was younger.
Yeah, that was
the guy who has like a dead worm in his skull, and she's like, I don't know, maybe he's a contender. Let's find out. I'm gonna start Googling. And like, so that freaks me out, right? And just to make my position clear, like just because I've been partially dogging on Biden because that's the crux of the debate, but I view Trump as like an abhorrent potential candidate for the Republic. I look at what he's done, I look at what he said publicly, and I am repulsed. I want a different candidate. The main crux of what I'm saying, the main thrust of what I'm saying is, you're making it hard for me. I'm an independent. I'm a moderate Republican. I should be the person who's getting attracted away from Trump. I'm an easy sell, and yet this is becoming a harder sell. You gotta make it an easy sale. And so I agree with all the pragmatic reasons that Wick said. I think that, as a matter of fact, those are going to be the reasons why Biden remains the president, and remains the nominee. And he needs to rest on his laurels in order to win. He needs to lean on policy. He needs to lean on good interviews. He needs to lean on all the things that Wick has articulated. So I'm with him in that regard, but I am resentful and pissed off that I'm being forced into this choice.
But do neither you or Chris disagree? Sorry, I'll let you go in one sec. But Connor, do neither you or Chris disagree with Wick's assessment of the polling for the other candidates? And I know it's only been limited, but
yeah. Like I have a feeling that just incumbent advantage alone, there's only been 2 presidents who were incumbents who lost. It was like George W. Bush and somebody 100 years before him. So
and Trump.
Bush won.
Oh yeah, I guess there's 3 now.
It was HW.
Yeah, sorry, Bush Senior. If I said it wrong. So Bush Senior, somebody 100 years ago, and Trump. Those are the only incumbents who have ever lost in American history. And so even arguing that somebody should give up the incumbent advantage, I know, is a hard sell.
Yeah, and I'll speak briefly because I know Soyattle has to go, but no, I don't dispute the polling. I think the Democrats have got themselves in a really tough situation. At this point, my comment about Eric Adams was really a fantasy football, guy parachuting in kind of thing. So I think the Dems have really backed themselves into a corner with this, and who knows? I mean, I have no way of forecasting the actual election. Either way, it'll be popcorn and soda for me, so it'll be exciting. But yeah, I'll let Soyattle go ahead with.
But Wick, real quick. This is the reason why I've hit this point like 2 or 3 times now. Is if you don't have a deep bench, and we're in a country of 330 million people, that's a problem. Because basically, the people that I cited off for. Well, sure.
Yeah,
and I'm not. So if anything, I'm trying to emphasize it for the people at home. Is like, this is a concern going forward. Because let's say Biden wins, right? Next election, who are we looking at? Are we looking at Kamala Harris, who has the charisma of a black hole? Are we looking at like Gavin Newsom, whose gun control makes Biden look tame by comparison? Are we looking at Miss Whitmer, who so far her greatest claim to fame is almost getting kidnapped by terrorists? Like, what, these...
You're also being fact-checked. There's 10
develop.
presidents who didn't win a second term. There's 10.
10?
Okay,
right.
According to my chat.
I'm going to Google
Chat
to make
could
sure
lie to me. Chat could lie to me. Chat's lied to me before.
Let's double check
I'll
that.
Google it.
Soyattle, you wanted to jump in here?
Yeah, I'm gonna get out of here. So thank you very much for the comments. And I think the problem is that Biden not performing well has interrupted our party rhythm. We've got an incumbent, and we're going to put all our energy into that incumbent. We're going to make sure that they win. We're going to make sure that they accomplish everything that they need to accomplish. And then, when all of our great governors who go back to get reelected, along with our presidential incumbent, step into the limelight, those are the candidates for the next session. If not Harris, it could be whoever wins in Washington. Sorry, I forget my governor candidate. It's not Inslee, but Inslee, if you remember, he was up there. It was Sanders. It was, that was our bench back in 2020. And now they're going back to the farm team, going back to rebuild that bench because our big guy is taking us to the championship. And so while we're in a development phase, yeah, it would suck to have to go deep into the bench and find someone that doesn't have the name recognition. But I think that for the pragmatic reasons, I'm still in the Biden-Harris camp. I think that if the campaign makes a change, it has to happen very quickly, and it's going to upset a lot of people. I think we have to hear the case out that Biden was making room for Trump to make mistakes, but I haven't heard excuses like that. I'm disappointed that there's no messaging like that coming from the campaign. So thank you all for a great chat. Sorry for being scuffed this stream, but we do what we have to do sometimes.
Yeah, no, thank you for jumping in last minute. I appreciate it. And where can people find you, Soyattle?
Okay, if you go to soyattle.tv, that will redirect you to my Twitch. But I am also on YouTube. I'm sort of building up multiple channels. My primary channel, of course, is the Eco-Modernist channel live. You can reach me there at the Eco-Modernist channel on YouTube every Sunday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'll probably wrap things up in the next 20 minutes or so, half hour, depending on how long you guys want to go for. It looks like there were actually 5 presidents: Gerald Ford, Grover Cleveland, Jimmy Carter, H.W. Bush, and Trump. Though
John Adams,
Cleveland...
John Quincy Adams, Martin Van Buren.
Yeah, so hold on. So just to clarify, because I'll take the L on it, okay? I saw when I Googled it, I saw that there was 10 in total. Now, my cope, if I'm not taking the L, is I think that some of these were like vice presidents who succeeded their president and then lost as the incumbent. But I'll just take the L, okay? At maximum, there's 10 people who had some kind of incumbent advantage who lost. Therefore, there's like what is it? There's 55 presidents. So it's like a 20% chance of losing as an incumbent.
It's okay. Wick 1.
Wick
0.
Wick got the dub tonight.
So I do want to ask too, because you brought up the polling. Oh, you have your hand up. Sorry, Chris. Go ahead.
You can go ahead because it might be relevant to what you're going to say anyway.
So Do we really think though that the polls, like I know that like let's say it shows Harris or anybody else being down compared to Biden against Trump. Do we think though that that's something that couldn't change? That okay, look, people are saying that now because Biden's the nominee, but if Biden drops out, you have an open convention, and they pick the best candidate at the open convention, hopefully, and then that person will improve in the polls.
You would need a personality transplant, basically, but I'll let him go.
Sure, it could. It's possible, but it's equally possible that they get lower approval ratings than they even have now. It's possible that they go down in the polls that they have it. So yes,
Kamala Harris would have to learn how to actually have a personality. That's what you're asking. You're saying Kamala Harris would. There's this one clip that was on Twitter that was actually kind of funny, where somebody was asking Kamala how to cook a turkey. And she was like, you get that baby, you lather it up, you put butter on, not just on the outside, but you put it on the inside. You take salt and pepper, you rub the entire thing. I'm actually like a crazy cook. I'm like a crazy baker. And it seemed like she was enthusiastic, charismatic, empathetic, interested in the conversation, goofy, funny, weird. Right. So if she was able to replicate that across her entire personality, both public and private, I think that she could change her numbers around. But if she's stilted, weird, jumpy, kind of, no offense to her, but I've seen some clips that make her look like a pillhead, then like if she's like that in public, then she's going to get trounced.
Yeah. Yeah, I get the impression, and this is, amateur impression, she's kind of over-focus grouped a little bit. If she's more spontaneous, that would probably be helpful for her. My larger, this is the point I was going to make, my larger thought for, what I kind of like to see the Democrats think about, and I have similar feelings for the Republicans, but we can ignore that for a second, but yeah, whichever candidate the Democrats are running, and there's even been polls of like generic Democrat, right, kind of a thing, against Trump. I mean, I think the thing I would like to see Democrats think about is that they're experiencing a nail-biting election season against one of the worst presidential candidates ever like in history, in a way. I mean, this shouldn't be close, in a way. I also think about Republicans, you're running a nail-biter, election against somebody who might be senile, and that says something about you. I mean, one of the larger thoughts, I think, is like the average voter doesn't like either party. It doesn't like either party's platform, and I think that's something I would love to see. I keep waiting each election season for the party that loses to actually have like a thought about why they lost, right? Like, it would have been nice in 2020 if Republicans thought like maybe we shouldn't run Donald Trump again. But obviously they didn't have that conversation.
They had that. It was stolen. They took it from us.
There's something there. I'm not joking. And this is something that like pisses me off to no end. And I'm not trying to piss off the half dozen to dozen Trumpers that are in my chat right now. But there's that tweet. If you guys remember the one where it's like, massive fraud on this scale is so egregious that it voids the law and in statutes and congressional authority, and in this case maybe even the Constitution. That was one of Trump's tweets on his own social media websites, right? And so if he was telling the truth, then at this point he should have shown outcome determinative fraud that prevented him from succeeding in office. And then at that point, I would maybe excuse the tweet. But he has not shown outcome determinative fraud. He's continued to perpetuate that narrative without any basis or backing. He doesn't have to win it in court. He could win it in the courts of public opinion. He could say, hey, listen, the courts aren't listening to me, but take a look at all this evidence. I have all this evidence that 50,000 voters in this state that would be outcome determinative don't exist, and they stuffed the ballot box. But he hasn't even published that because he doesn't have it. So at that point, he is lying, and he's saying that he's willing to suspend the Constitution. That is disqualifying. I know that a lot of people on Twitter are like, oh, so you're saying that you would vote for a corpse Biden over an alive Donald Trump? And the answer is like, yes. Yes, because the alive Donald Trump is willing to suspend the Constitution based off of a lie that makes him dangerous and stupid and disqualified for the office. So yes, if you put a twig up with googly eyes glued to his face and you say this or Trump, I'm going to pick the stick with the fucking googly eyes.
It's like the
Based.
Bill
I
Maher
can't even.
Yeah,
I can't even argue with that.
that is based.
If we are going though, right, to get a little less based in the house, okay, to get a little more cringe, if you will. Like if we're just doing fantasy picks, like I agree with Chris that we are in a place that we should not be. We are stuck. And if I had a time machine, if I could turn back time, I would make different decisions, and I would encourage everyone to make different decisions than they have. However, I do not have that time machine. We have to deal with reality as it is rather than how we wish it would be. And here are the choices that are before us. The first choice that we have, Biden step down or Biden stay in. And if Biden step down, who replace him? And again, I think
Stick
I've
with
made my
googly
case
eyes.
pretty coherently that the best chance is Biden. But if we were just talking about fantasy, right, in a fantasy world, may I nominate myself for the position of Democratic nominee? I think I've demonstrated
Hey, I'd vote for
tonight
you over Trump.
I think I've demonstrated tonight that I have the chops, the debate chops, to beat the Republicans, such as Counterpoints, right? To beat the independents, such as Chris here, to take care of the media class, such as Frank Bowman, okay? I just wiped the floor with that guy, okay? Over and over again. To take care of the hippies like Soyattle. I think that I've demonstrated my chops. And so if we're going to replace Biden with anyone, I think I have just as much chance as any other candidate. And I want
Well,
you,
you're over
dear
35
viewer,
now.
to really process that for what that is. Okay? Really process that and then come back to me and say, do we want to replace Biden or not? And I guarantee you that if you truly internalize what I have just said to you tonight, that you too, my dear viewer, will be riding with Biden come tomorrow. Okay?
All right, so I did tell people that we would talk about the media thing real quick. I know you mentioned the soft coup, Wick. I'm going to jump in slightly, and then let everyone else take it. But I disagree that there's like a soft coup. I think that we're a democratic society. People are allowed in the press and in podcasts and streams and whatever to talk about who they think the nominee should be and talk about maybe we should possibly at the convention get rid of this person. I think that's all a valid conversation.
But do you think after Biden decides no, I'm still gonna be the nominee, right? I'm not stepping down. You've tried to persuade me. We've had this conversation. You wrote a lot about it today. If you think that after that they still try to force him out against his will, what else do you call that?
Well, if it's the delegate, I mean the delegates doing it, or because like they're allowed to, right, legally?
Punditry, the people trying to pressure others to do it for it, the elite podcasting class, right?
That's just their
Well,
opinion.
yeah, but I
in
mean,
my
like,
view.
isn't that just kind of
Right?
free speech in a free society? That would
It's
be
free.
my
I'm not
opinion on the
saying that
matter.
this is illegal or should be illegal, but the reason I use, and I'll admit, slightly hyperbolic language, this is soft coup, is to show de facto what this is. It is unelected officials, people who have no place in government, journalists, podcasters, influencers, trying to override the will of the American voter in order to replace the nominee that was elected by a primary process that we have in place, that our institutions have established. And you can say, well, it wasn't a real primary, it didn't have open debates, and that's all true, but it's still the process as we have laid out and as it has been decided. So again, what else do you call it when you have a group of unelected officials, a small group, smaller than the overwhelming majority, 50 to 70% of Democratic voters who want Biden to remain the nominee? What do you call it when you have that group, that small group, trying to use force and pressure and influence to get the nominee taken forcefully from Joe Biden and given to another? What else? What other word would you like to use?
You use force, but like the New York Times can't force Joe Biden to step down. Only
Influence.
Biden can do that.
I'll take the force away, right? But
Well,
use pressure.
No,
and
no,
influence.
I'm licking what you're spitting, so to speak. So I get it. Like, there's all these people are ostensibly Democrats. They all ostensibly push in the same direction. They all believe that Trump is a threat to democracy. So after Biden says, no, get behind me or get the fudge out of the way, if they persist in their criticisms, at what point are they just taking down an aligned interest?
I'm okay with criticism. I'm not saying you shouldn't criticize. Criticize away.
But my thing is, so we kind of do know what Biden is capable of, just because we've seen his public appearances, we've seen the legislation he's passed, we've seen the recent presidency and all that kind of stuff. So it's relatively transparent. But at the same time, I think based off of available information, it's okay to be alarmed about what's going on. And if it gets any worse, to say this dude is non-viable. And by the way, like that's not even a criticism of Biden, right? Like, we all get older, we all start to have health issues. We will probably all experience some level of cognitive decline, some faster than others. And so it's not like a moral failing of Biden's to be aging, but if he was having a critical medical emergency, there would be a process with which to remove him
The
and
25th Amendment, that is the process. And yes, if that's the case, then we can have a different conversation. But what I'm asserting tonight is that that is not the case. That is demonstrably not the case as far as the evidence that we have before us. And again, let me remind you of the evidence that Frank Bowman used to try to prove that in his interview with, what was his name, George Stephanopoulos, in his interview, that, this was obviously evidence of cognitive decline, of him using the term, I didn't think I did. No. That's a term. That's a term everyone uses. What is this? And this is why I don't trust it, because it's fundamentally dishonest. That using that as your evidence to me is a fundamentally dishonest way attack. And so
the debate as evidence of cognitive decline.
No, not the debate. His answer there, right, where he says, "I don't think I did know." What Frank Bowman tried to imply is that he was either, and he said this, that he was either lying or he couldn't actually remember whether he saw it or not.
Sorry, real quick, I want to address this directly, but I'll try to be brief.
Chris too has his hand up, but
as a debater, I know that a lot of debaters watch their previous performances. I can't. Okay, it physically makes me cringe. I have to go into the next debate and start yelling again. So if Biden was like, "I fucked up," if I watch that, I'm going to cringe to death. That, for me, that's a perfectly valid excuse. Don't focus on your mistakes. Try to make improvements on it. You can rely on other people for positive feedback about your debate for performance. I'll end the rant there.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I had a few thoughts, and hopefully I can remember them. So, I mean, I think, Wick, to your point, I think you're absolutely right in the sense of, this is going to be a Republican talking point, right? Then further, the more criticism there is, then that's going to get dragged out, as a Republican talking point. It's going to be all over the Trump ads, all this kind of stuff, right? I think to the long game, the only concern I have is the long game. If everybody at this point says, Biden's fine, don't worry about it, Biden's fine, and it becomes increasingly obvious that he's not.
No one's
fine.
saying that, though.
Yeah,
right?
no, people do.
Fine.
But people,
no one here is saying that.
Yeah, no one here is saying that. No, but I think if people are kind of backing up and saying Biden's at the top of his game, I met with him, he's doing great, this kind of stuff, then that's going to make the entire Democratic Party look dishonest. So that's something to think about long game wise. And the last thing I was thinking about, we talked about a neurocognitive exam and that kind of stuff. There actually is, and again, this is, it'd be really cool if somebody did this. This is kind of my thought. There actually is computer software that can analyze people's speech and look for patterns that are common for dementia, essentially. So this has been done with Ronald Reagan's speeches, for instance, while he was still president. And it's not definitive, but there's reasonable evidence to suggest that Ronald Reagan probably was in the early stages of Alzheimer's disease at the end of his presidency. So that could be done with some of these speeches to some extent, and that could, again, like I said, either this really is stuff that people do, like you were saying with some of your interviewees who are just uncomfortable interviewees, and it's kind of common for people to just freeze up in the camera, or perhaps some of these speech patterns could be pretty indicative of Alzheimer's disease. Again, it's not going to replace the neurocognitive exam, but it can be sort of illustrative one way or another. And it's free. We can just do it. If somebody has the computer software and knows how to do it.
Have you done it?
No, I'm not proficient in that kind of software.
Oh, I have no idea.
What's that?
Yeah, I can't speak to this. This is the first time you were telling me that this even exists, so I don't know.
People do exist that know how to use this software. Like I said, there are peer-reviewed studies that have been done with Ronald Reagan, specifically with this kind of software. So I would thought, just for curiosity's sake, I think it would be awesome if some of those people are listening right now, and you have access to the software. Publish this quickly, so we have some sense of what the software would say about his speech patterns.
Okay.
All right. Well, hey. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, one of the comments that I got from chat is I watched the Reagan farewell address, his last appearance, and his last debate, all of which were better than Joe in 2020. And so that's what I'm saying is like, there's plenty of jokes about Reagan. Like,
Teleprompter.
well, and he was
Teleprompter.
well, actually, hold on if you'll allow me to make the joke. So there's jokes about Reagan because he was a fan of jelly beans, of them just jamming jelly beans in the back of his mouth and them doing voiceover dubs for him for his speeches. But that's kind of my indication is like, listen, I am with Wick on a pragmatic level. I think his assessment of what is going to happen is accurate. I am just saying, I the same way other people are trying to raise the alarm about the SCOTUS thing, the SCOTUS decision, I'm trying to raise the alarm that this should be an easier choice, and you should be making it as easy as possible for moderates and centrists to jump on Biden. It shouldn't even be a competition, and the fact that we're in this position is frustrating.
Well, it was always going to be this. Unfortunately, one of the reasons that Trump is dangerous is because he has a following that will excuse everything he does, literally everything he does. He has a core group that is tied to him in a way that Biden or any other candidate, to be clear, just does not. That's one of the reasons that it's difficult, right? That's one of the reasons this whole thing is difficult, is because it was always going to be like Biden's been down this whole time. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but even before the debate, even months before the debate, he was down in the polls. He's been down this whole time. I can't think of there may have been a point right before the candidacy season or something where he was ahead, but at least for the last few months, as far as I know,
during the conviction, Trump's conviction, I think.
Yeah. There might have been like a small like blip, right? But for the most part, he's been down. Like this race is remarkably stable and remarkably steady. What we need to do, what we should have been doing, right? Because you guys have asked me this a couple times, but I've never got to answer. How do we win with Biden? How do we win? Because I think that's what we need to be asking and having the conversation when right now. As you say, counterpoints. As you say, maybe we shouldn't, but it is what it is. We're going to have Biden as a nominee. It's going to be that's just going to be the nominee.
Do you want me to answer that?
Well, no, I'm
well, hopefully we all think about it at the very least.
Right? I'm asking the question so I can answer that, and then I'm curious what you would have to say too, right? But the question we should be asking ourselves is, how does Biden win? And let me tell you, there's a few routes, but this is the route that I think has the best chance. I could very well be wrong. There are other routes that we could take, but for me, what we do is we run Biden and Harris as more of a... Harris needs to go out front a little more than a normal vice president would. Not terribly much. She shouldn't overshadow the president, but the age question is out there. We need to alleviate people's concerns and saying, yes, even if Biden does have another incident, we have a capable replacement. By not replacing Biden as the top of the ticket, but running it in this manner, we alleviate, right, a lot of the concerns, a lot of people who do want Biden to be the nominee. And there's plenty of people who are riding with Biden. They don't want to vote for another candidate. They don't want to vote for Kamala. They don't want to vote for Newsom. They don't want to vote for Whitmer. They want to vote for Biden. And so we keep those people on, and we also appeal to independents, appeal to outside people saying, okay, we got this. We have a plan in place. We know what we need to do. This is the things that we have done for you. Policy-wise, these are the things that we're going to do for you come November if we get reelected. This is what we're going to do. Like recently, Biden passed End Parkinson's Disease Act, something like that. Great legislation. Put forth the policy positions that you want. Really make this a referendum on what Trump failed to do and what Trump wants to do, and turn this conversation around. That's what we need to have happen. I don't know if we can, but we got to try. What are your thoughts, gang?
Yeah, so being transparent, I think Biden needs to play defensively. And what I mean by that is don't go into debate scenarios where you can be caught flat-footed, unoptical, rhetorically ungifted, et cetera, but hit the public trail hard. So do public appearances, go to restaurants, talk to people, do interviews, all that kind of stuff. Be in front of the camera as much as possible as you can within a relatively controlled environment. and then play defensive when it comes to like contest. Also, lean on your accolades. So if you're going to say, we have the bipartisan border bill, we passed this infrastructure bill, we did this, we did that, we cut down your student loans, we capped insulin prices, all of the accolades that he can lean on for the past 4 years, he needs to lean on those hard and show that governance is not just about rhetoric or perception. But what I'm saying is the thing that will unravel that and unravel all of that goodwill that he can do in the next 60 to 90 days is a disastrous second debate. So he can win the goodwill, but he has to perform well at the second one, or it will all be for naught.
I don't disagree with that. He cannot have another debate performance like he did in Thursday of last week, right? He can't do it. So
I agree.
with you.
But one thing too, I think he should solve the Israel-Palestine conflict. He's got that peace deal right now on the table. If he solves if he solves the Israel-Palestine conflict before election day,
all you got to do,
he's gonna win.
It's easy. Yeah.
I would definitely push. I would vote for him then. Yes, I will.
But like, if he can actually do it, I mean, like,
Palestine.
Now, hold on. Everybody's laughing just because, like, obviously this is a problem that has plagued us our entire adult lives. I agree with you, though, that Tachyon, like, maybe not an end to the conflict like we have a perpetual end to the conflict, but solving the humanitarian crisis and bringing an end to armed hostilities before the election to show that you have the leadership chops to bring hostile people to the table and end the bloodshed. I knew what you were saying, even if they were being dicks about it.
I will say, though, that you're right in that he needs... I don't even think he needs to succeed at it, but I think he needs to show that he's done everything he can with it, and I think he has. Like, if we look at if we take Israel-Palestine as a foreign policy issue and we look at Biden's record in responding to the events there, that is a strong case to all but the watermelon Twitter people, okay, right? Like, they're never going to vote for Biden anyway. There are a lot of the people who are trying to push Biden out, to be clear, right? But they're just gone. I don't think we get them as voters. But the great thing is, by excluding those extremists, we appeal very strongly to the centrists, right? And the independents. And I think we make up way more than we lose by casting them aside. But that's neither here nor there. I think that I agree with my friend here, Counterpoints. He does need to get out there, but he's doing that. Should he do it more? To an extent, but at the same time, he does have to govern the country. And I want him to show further legislative accomplishments between now and then. I think he can. I think that is a great, as Chris says here, that's a great chance for him to show a legislative accomplishment if he can get a peace treaty, a ceasefire deal, or something like that. I think that really puts to bed a lot of the can he govern rhetoric, because obviously, if he succeeds, he can. It's proofs in the pudding.
Cool. I want to get your answer on that, and then I'll get everyone a chance to do closing statements, unless there's another topic you want to broach, people.
Who's answering? Me?
Oh, yeah. I kind of cucked your answer because I answered after Counter.
No, it's a great question. I mean, I was going to kind of half joke. I'm not sure you want Joe Biden out there talking about Parkinson's disease. But just a classical conditioning.
He signed it, though.
I'm not saying the policy was a bad one. I'm just saying it might not be the tone for the moment here. Classical conditioning is a thing. No, I think I think a lot of what the other guys were saying is pretty much on point. I think people want to see him out there. They want to see him being vigorous, countering that narrative that he's frail or possibly in cognitive decline. I like the idea of getting Kamala Harris out there more. I think she needs to be, like I said, I think both of them to some extent have been focus grouped to death a little bit, and tacking both of them to the. Now, I mean, from what I understand from Harris's record, she's a very centrist. She's was a prosecutor, and getting her out there talking like maybe she did 15 years ago, I think would help her a lot. So that's why I say I think she's been focus grouped a lot, in the last 5 or so years, and it hasn't really helped her a lot. But getting her out there and talking like a human being, I think would be great. Just to give her some personality to some extent. I mean, I think emphasizing not only what have they done, but also what are they going to do about what people are concerned about. So, like, inflation is a big thing. I mean, people have been concerned about Biden's age, but they're still worried about inflation. And I know inflation has dropped. but people still are thinking, in terms of, groceries today are more than they were 4 years ago, even if inflation's gone down, So talking about things like that, and not just saying, "Oh, don't worry about it because the stock market's great," But just like, what are people saying? What are they concerned about, and what is the president going to do to fix these types of concerns? So. And for the average, like, middle income, low to middle income, working class, middle class, like, getting rid of college tuition fees and that kind of stuff for people that are in debt for that, college debt, that's great, but that's not what the average person is concerned about, So what is the average person, who's making, $20 an hour, really worried about, and what is Biden and Harris going to do about that? And I think they could win on that stuff. I mean, I think that's, I'm a little frustrated they haven't talked about that, kind of stuff as much as maybe they could have done. But I'd like to see more of that. So I still think they could win. I mean, it is close, and so, and it is still 4 months away, and things change, and that's why it's hard to predict what's going to happen in 4 months. This thing about the cognitive decline thing, is bad, for Biden. He needs to take that seriously. But I, on the other hand, I'm also worried that if they focus only on that, they're not going to address some of the other concerns. As Wick mentioned, Biden's numbers haven't been great for a while. And that's not all due to his age necessarily. And so they need to figure out what kinds of messaging. Like, they need to be more patriotic, for one thing. I mean, just Democrats in general. I think that's been a weakness of the Democrats. Is yeah, no, that's great. I see the point. No, absolutely. But I'm thinking of, like, the speech that Biden gave at Morehouse College. I mean, some of the speechwriters, they need to replace them.
I think recently Biden has been pretty patriotic. Like, his Point du Hoc speech, he was talking about, like, basically a lot of his speeches I've seen, like the State of the Union too. He talks about how basically America is this great force in the world. Like, it's not perfect,
Right.
but that
Yeah.
we have the obligation to help defend Ukraine. That is, like, in America's interest, and
Pax
that this is who
Americana,
America.
baby.
This is what America is when they're at their best, right? I think that he has actually captured that really well, especially with Trump being, a wannabe dictator.
Yeah. Oh no,
It's the
absolutely. No,
contrast.
I think that's great. It's just they do have to be careful about every single time they step off of that. The Republicans are going to pounce, and that's going to be all over their advertisements. And so I think they need to be worried about some of that message.
No, they should, like,
Yeah.
I think we do need to move away as the Democrats. I think they have been moving away, hopefully,
They
from
have.
this
I
whole,
mean,
like, America bad, America white supremacist patriarchal country, which is to say that we can't talk about inequalities, but that, like, trying to, this whole, like, Hassan Piker, the Houthi pirates are actually the good guys, and
Yeah,
America's
we gotta
evil, America
cut
bad.
that
Like, that's
culture
just,
out. Cut it out.
that's a losing proposition, and it should be.
Amen.
All right. Well, hey, I want to give everybody a chance. We'll do a reverse order. So, Wick, I'll give you a chance to go first here. What's your closing statements? What are your final thoughts, and where can people find you?
Okay, so I'll start by telling you where you can find me. If you like what I have to say, or even if you hate what I have to say, but you want to talk to me, I'm really open to talk to. Easy to get on my show. It's really nice. We do talks like this all the time. We had Cenk Uygur. We had Representative Joe Walsh on my show on Saturday. Destiny comes on time to time. Brianna Wu was there. It was a great conversation. But yeah, if you want to find that kind of stuff, you can find me on youtube.com/@wick-tv or on Twitter and Kick at @WhickTV. WHICK, spells like it sounds. Yeah, closing thoughts. Fear is a mind killer. Fear is a mind killer. We cannot be making decisions that are this important based on panic and fear. And that, I fear, is what is going on right now. That there are a lot of journalists, a lot of podcasters, a lot of influencers who are scared right now, right? They're worried. They're concerned. Their concerns are somewhat valid. However, instead of taking a sober, clear-eyed look at the data, at the numbers, they have decided to start building a narrative, gossip mongering, rumor mongering, making shit up, right? Based on very faulty sources. The journalistic integrity and practices have been subpar on this throughout this whole fiasco. and they are engaging in a suicide spiral, for lack of a better term. They are a suicide cult that is determined that they cannot win, and so they will blow themselves and everyone up in order to, just make this prophecy self-fulfilling. No, screw that. We have a nominee who has performed amazingly throughout his term as president. President Biden has been one of the best legislative presidents in modern history. He has handled the foreign policy situations which he has been dealt with amazing capability. Afghanistan notwithstanding, I will give him the L on that one, okay? But when it comes to Ukraine and when it comes to Israel and Palestine, he has been almost pitch perfect. And I think that we have countries such as Taiwan, countries such as NATO, all the countries in NATO are looking to America for leadership. And I think that Biden has demonstrated, despite his age, that he is still up for the job. I think that it is such a risk to replace him right now, that I think that people who think this is going to be a smooth process, who think that we have better chance with someone else, there's no data to support that. And so when we're looking at this, we have to do this based on data-based decision-making. And the data, as I see it, shows that Biden is still the number one chance we have to beating Trump in November. And to me, that is the reason to tear. That's why we're here right now, to figure out how to beat Biden. I know I'm long-winded. I'll end with this. If you care about America, if you care about democracy, vote. Vote. Okay? And who I am voting for, and I can't tell you who to vote for, but who I'm voting for is Biden-Harris 2024 in November. Thank you.
All right,
So-
counterpoints.
Yep, my name is Connor. I run a YouTube channel named Counterpoints 40K. I also have Counterfire, which I'm live on right now, and Counterpoints, which is an essay channel. So if you like what I had to say tonight, go ahead and check out any of those. Main channel is science fiction. Second channel is debate. Third channel is essays. The politics and essays don't get as much love as they need to, but I'm doing my best over here with the limited time that I have. In reference to this thing, fear may be the mind killer, and you shouldn't allow panic to overwhelm you, but fear also keeps you alive. It is why God gave you that instinct in the first place. It's to evaluate your decisions so you don't jump off of a cliff or pet a rattlesnake or jam your head into a lion's maw just for the shits and giggles of it. It's to keep you alive. So in reference to this debate, I understand all the pragmatic reasons that Mr. Wick articulated. I agree with a healthy chunk of them. However, I do think that you are putting the American public in a difficult position when you say, hey, here's this massive dirtbag who said that he would suspend the Constitution because of fraud. He never produced the fraud, but he basically threatened the foundations of the Republic. And over here we have a guy who, if the debate was an indication, has difficulty maintaining coherent thoughts. And maintaining coherent thoughts is a fundamental and important part of the presidency. It's something that you can't just do at 8 p.m. at night. It's something that you have to do all the time. So I wish there was a better option. I was making jokes earlier about a stick with googly eyes being preferable than our current candidates. I do stand by that assessment. So with much fear for our republic, I will begrudgingly vote for Biden if I have to.
All right, Chris Ferguson.
All right, so I see to get in touch with me, I have a website, which is unimaginatively just my name, ChristopherJFerguson.com. You can also find me on Substack, Secrets of Grimoire Manor, where I write about psychology, science, Dungeons and Dragons, video games, and whatever the hell comes to my mind any given day. Closing comments, I would love to take Wick's time machine to 100 years in the future, because I write a lot about like history and psychology and stuff, and this is an awesome story. This whole election, the whole last 10 years is really just a wonderful story to tell our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren. Hopefully there's still an existing, stable, healthy United States 100 years from now. But if there is, what a fascinating history story this will be, of how we elected a crazy guy and then got rid of him and then maybe got him back because the other guy had dementia, maybe. It's just a great story. You can't make this shit up, basically. And I would love to write that book 100 years from now. Sadly, I will be long since in the ground. Anyway, yeah, so hope to hear from some of you.
Cool. Well, hey, thank you all for coming. Thank you all for watching. I guess I'll give like a very brief statement too, which is that I kind of went into this a little bit more leaning towards getting rid of Biden, and I'm probably still in that camp. Sorry, Wick, but it's not going to happen most likely, and we have to, whether it's Biden or somebody else, they have to win. We have to defeat Trump, no matter who it is, and I'm going to be fighting for them and campaigning for them probably too, hopefully. No matter who it is. So we just got to get him out of there. We got to get rid of Trump. So, and I do like Biden's foreign policy. I think he's done a pretty good job, actually. Minus the Afghan withdrawal. But yeah. Anyway, well, thank you all. Are you gonna stay live? I can raid you.
Just for a little, not for a lot.
I will be live probably for another 30 minutes to an hour because I'm actually going to break down Vosh calling Asmongold a fascist. That was a wild clip. So yeah, I'm going to be live for next 30 minutes to an hour. So if you want to raid that and have some fun, then go ahead.
I'll raid you.
Vosh says crazy shit. Oh, shocker.
No,
but yeah, I'll.
Oh no, I can't raid you. Connor, you need to turn it on so you can accept raids.
On YouTube?
Yeah, on YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah.
I won't do it immediately, but if you guys want to come over, just type in Counterpoints Coliseum or Counterfire in your YouTube search bar. You'll find me, and we'll be live for another 30 minutes to an hour.
Cool. All right. Well, hey, have a good night. Go check out Connor's stream here, and take care.